Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about 4 reasons why couples grow apart emotionally, and then the 4 levels of a relationship.
Some of you might have heard that, like growing apart emotionally, and said, oh my gosh, I haven't said this to anyone, or I don't talk to my friends about this, because social media, we post the highlight reel, but many of you tell us that you feel this way. And this actually was really standing out to us on a session with a new client that's coming on board with his wife. And he said, and it was so vulnerable and it was so open, you know, we've been together a long time. We've got children together. We have achieved great things, careers, you know, all the milestones.
They run a business together.
Yeah. And yet I feel the least emotionally connected than ever, right? So it's not about time together. It's not about reaching these milestones even. Of course, we love those and those are an important part of life. But in terms of being emotionally connected and preventing your relationship from growing apart, that's not going to cut it. So today's episode is going to cover that exactly.
Yeah, and this feeling of growing apart emotionally really is like a focus of just managing life events or just functioning well. And so that can be with kids and managing the kids' school or sports or needs, as well as just overall living and organization of a home, where to live, making sure the home is organized and put together well and functioning, right? Paying the bills, maintaining all the cars and the toys, the oil changes, the yard, just all of the things. So you get to a place where you're functioning, and sometimes you can feel like you're functioning at a high level, but you do not feel like you're emotionally connected or that you even know this partner of yours to any real deep level.
Yes, and it doesn't just stay there. Like, just because you get together and there's so much chemistry and love and, you know, passion in the beginning, it doesn't just automatically stay there. And so we're going to go into the 4 reasons why couples grow apart emotionally. But before that, we want to frame it inside of the 4 levels of relationship, which is something we developed so that you can place yourself. Because a relationship is almost like a living organism or an animal or a plant, right? Like if you think about a plant, as silly as it sounds to compare your relationship to a plant, if you have this gorgeous new plant, does it just automatically stay that way? No, like you have to nurture it, water it. There are certain ingredients that it needs to thrive, and it can bloom and it can grow, or it can actually diminish and decline and die off. Relationships are so similar. They're like a living, breathing being that doesn't just automatically stay in a certain stage. So Aaron, do you want to introduce the 4 levels of relationship before we go into why couples grow apart?
Yeah, for sure. So we'll start with the bottom level. And so, or you could say level 1 is a dysfunctional relationship. Now, I'll give you a brief sort of explanation or detail of what the experience here would be. And for a dysfunctional, this couple, and maybe this is something you've been feeling as well, built up resentments. You avoid conflicts primarily because of past pains. And from this point, you are more focused on the past. I tried to bring this up. We had a criticism. I feel put down. Obviously, I have resentments here. There's a lot of withholding. And then so with this, you don't have sex too often, or even just intimate moments in your conversation or just your being together. Your conversations are bland. They're about maintenance. And you don't even like spending that much time together and probably don't.
Yeah, kind of want to do your own things, right? Just kind of see each other. So that is a dysfunctional relationship. And again, it doesn't mean it's always staying that way. It might be a season that you're in. Of course, it's not going to change on its own. And if you feel that, like we don't want you to hear that word dysfunctional and be like, oh my gosh, we're doomed. You're not. You can give it the right nutrients, you can do the right things, and you can take it to these next levels that we're going to go into.
And at this level of dysfunction, I want it to be open because it could seem like it's obvious that we're in this place. But in this case, sometimes it's openly expressed by both parties, but sometimes it's not. And sometimes you're just in this place and maybe you feel this way. You may assume that your partner also feels that way, or there's a lot of non-communication. There's not a lot of conversation, so it can feel like you easily slip into a more dysfunctional relationship. But like you just said, Jocelyn, and for those of you listening, whichever level you find yourself at, you can go both up and down. Yep. Well, you think, well, dysfunctional, where else can we go from this? Well, if you went down further than this, primarily this is when couples choose to complete the relationship. Mm-hmm. Now, as we move on, there are seasons. So notice that if you're bringing attention to your relationship and emotionally being more connected, you're going to move up. Yeah. But anytime, like you said with the plant, anytime you take your attention off of it and you start to slip into this more of a functional type role, though you might not notice day to day, week to week, month, even a few years, you're in a slower decline. Yeah. So you're always moving up or down, not immediately out of one of these levels, but maybe lower in that level until you actually transition. And a lot of times you might not even notice when you slip into these.
Absolutely. Well said. So going to the second level then, right? From dysfunctional to functional. And a lot of couples that we connect with in our private sessions, at our workshops, are in this. And they've gotten so used to it that they don't even know to aspire for the next level. So a functional relationship is when conversations are mostly about getting things done and your life being managed, similar to the dysfunctional relationship as well, but even more. Like it's even more about, hey, we need to do this, and what about these errands? And it's become much more about the to-do list. Sex happens, but it's routine. There's not a lot of talk about pleasure, not trying new things. It's just you kind of do it because you know it's a part of your life and relationship and what's important, but it feels more routine. And conversations can turn into conflicts and escalate and even have longer argument hangovers. In this functional relationship, you can tolerate being disconnected after an argument far too long. Like you can just kind of tell, oh, yep, we go the 3 to 5 days, not really talking to each other that much, but we know eventually we're going to talk again and it'll be the weekend and we'll move on. And, you know, it can be kind of painful in those argument hangovers, and then they don't get really repaired. Mm-hmm. So this is where it can easily slip down from a functional to dysfunctional when you're not repairing those disagreements, those conversations that are important. And here's the key thing. In this functional relationship, while your life is working, your home is working, you know, you have some of that routine sex and, you know, seemingly things are okay. The thing is, though, because we're talking in this episode about emotional connection, is in this functional relationship, you don't feel understood by each other emotionally. Your needs, your feelings often either aren't discussed or they're just not understood by your partner. And this can lead to feeling more like roommates, right? So our life works, okay, you know, things look good, but where's our emotional connection here? Like, when was the last time we opened up and had a deep, vulnerable, meaningful conversation where we felt like, oh my gosh, I see you and I love you, and like this is, you know, the person I can open up with the most. And so that's what's really missing in this functional relationship.
Yeah, and often when you do try to share something, you'll feel invalidated when you try to share it.
The majority of the time. Like there's very few times where there actually is an emotional understanding. You want to go to the next one?
At this place, you know, you can operate a very high level of efficiency with your coworkers, for instance, right? And you may also be doing that with your partner. So you can be managing and functioning the home and the kids and your overall life events and activities at a very high level. But it's absolutely missing the connection, the passion, the drive, the deeper understanding. So I do want to mention that. And this is where you get to the place of like, well, we're doing fine. Well, yeah, because maybe you are even operating at a really high level. Maybe your business really is thriving. Maybe your kids get to every game. You know, maybe you're together a lot. But all of these high-level efficiencies are lacking this emotional connection, and hence why the topic, feeling like you're growing apart emotionally. And often this is the place where it starts, right? Because you're operating at this high level of functioning, but what you're absolutely missing is this emotional connection.
Absolutely. Well said. So going now to the third level of relationship is a healthy relationship.
And this is one where you're proactively communicating about important matters. You have disagreements. Notice we're not ever telling anyone that you don't have conflicts and you don't have agreements. Actually, you should never seek to avoid challenges. So you have disagreements, but they do not escalate. And you are able to keep your argument hangovers to shorter amounts of time. And a key difference here with the healthy from the functional is that you do repair conflicts emotionally. So a huge key piece here, you enjoy time together and your conversations are experience-based. Another key that, number one, you're at least moving up from a functional, if not already into a healthy. So if you're listening, you're like, well, how do I know which way I'm moving? Even if you identified yourself in the functional relationship, managing things well, when you get to the place where your conversations are experience-based,
meaning like feelings,
rather
emotions.
than about the activities and the things you're doing, what your experience is while doing that activity, now you're moving at least up the ladder of functional towards healthy, if not already in healthy.
Yeah. There's much more of an understanding. There's much more of
Exactly. You're understood by your partner mostly, and you're even seeking to understand your partner even more. And in this case, though you have conflicts, you're not feeling the invalidation that you might at the functional level.
Yes.
And there are probably still areas for you that you desire to grow more together.
See, that's a really key piece right there, is that in a healthy relationship, there's still a willingness and a desire to keep growing. Like, healthy couples know you haven't reached this pinnacle. It's an aspiration to keep being better for each other so you can take feedback from each other. You reflect individually on how you could be even better. You know, as a healthy relationship, that you don't just automatically stay there. You're ongoingly looking for what are we doing that's working and what are we doing that's not working. Because you can easily go down a level. Like, you're not just guaranteed to stay at the healthy level.
Yeah.
You can go down to that functional relationship as well.
And if there was one key thing that starts your progress towards this fourth level of being empowered or conscious relationship, as we also say it, it is that piece of realizing you never really achieve any final goal. The relationship and life is always evolving. So that's the very first key. Like, if you were running, I don't know, a marathon towards this next level, that's your very first step. So that's your very first step to start to move towards this empowered conscious relationship, which you want to describe more in detail what that stage actually feels like.
So, hard to believe, but you can actually go even beyond a healthy relationship, which is where your conversations are exploratory. You go deeper into physical, emotional, spiritual growth. It's like you two engage in conversations where you're exploring life, you're exploring the meaning of things, you are helping each other heal and transform and learn about each other and your past and things that you can really actively work on. And you want to find the root causes of things together. Like, you're like, okay, where did this come from? What could we do? How did our past play a part of this? Like, it's very much about self-development, transformation, ongoingly becoming, kind of to take it to the next level, just the best versions of yourselves in a spiritual sense, in an energetic sense, in an emotional sense. And you two really want to evolve together. You are both out to be the most conscious beings that you can be, the most self-actualized, just the best versions of yourselves. And in that, you each take responsibility for your life, for your happiness, for your mental health. Like, there is such a willingness to take on anything in yourself that isn't thriving. You don't put any of that on your partner, right? There's such a responsibility within yourself, and you see that your energy, your emotions plays a big part in the relationship. So it's like you're not willing to kind of just get stuck or stagnant. Anything you'd add to that level?
No, that's right. And I just wanted to say before we move on, because we'll cover now 4 big reasons couples grow apart emotionally. And honestly, they could be in any stage. So when we've done a specific workshop on this before, we called them downdraft actions and then updraft actions, which that term comes from a different teacher. But essentially, in any of these stages, you could start to see what are the actions or what is going to be the experiences that are going to start to move us down a level. Again, no matter which level you're at. So we want to really cover those 4 big reasons couples grow apart. And then lastly, with the empowered conscious relationship, I do want to say that it is not always easy and comfortable. Mm-hmm. So I want to get that out of the way because it can be a misnomer that going up the levels of relationships, it sort of gets easier and funner. Mm-hmm. And it's just not the case, right? Mm-hmm. Things will become even more enjoyable. You'll reach depths of celebration and understanding and connectedness. And that does not come without some challenges that you dive into and really look at all that you shared. What are the root causes here? Where am I taking responsibility for myself, for the actions, for my impact, as well as how is this moving us more towards what our relationship is meant to be? So this is not an easy path necessarily. I want to just have that be clear. It's not like you move up these levels and it's quote unquote easier. Mm-hmm. If life was just easy and comfortable, you're not doing that much. Like whatever level you've reached, anytime you get to a place where, oh, I'm good enough,
stagnation.
It's going to lead to some level of stagnation. So that's just a key piece. And some people might be thinking, well, then do I need to go into empowered conscious relationship? And yes, because going deep into life is a part of why we're all here. Mm-hmm. And you get to do this with a partner and become the best version of yourself.
Well said.
So now it's going to be really important to start to notice these places where you might be in what we call downdraft actions. But Jocelyn, would you start talking about what are these 4 big reasons couples start to grow apart?
Yeah, so growing apart emotionally, the first one is if you have unresolved conversations and conflicts. Keyword unresolved. So if you have built up a pattern because you say you're busy or you two are just avoiding having the hard conversations, you don't circle back to disagreements. What we see a lot, and we talked about this in our book a bit, The Argument Hangover, is that it's just kind of like, oh, let's just come back and say I'm sorry and just move on because we want to get on with our day. No, to be in either in a healthy or an empowered conscious partnership, you don't just apologize. You reflect together on what was the root cause here. What lesson can we take away from this? What can we do differently in the future? And so if you're leaving conversations unresolved, just trying to get past them, you're leaving damage and wounds there from things you say to each other or how you're talking to each other, that is only going to create a lack of trust, a lack of safety, grow the distance, or what I like to say is create emotional clutter, right? So anytime you're leaving something unresolved, it's like leaving a pile of clothes in your room. And okay, that one pile might not bother you, ruin your day, but if one pile turns into 2 and then it turns into 4 and then 6 and 8, all of a sudden you're not going to fit in the room, to use an analogy, right? So you're not going to actually enjoy the room. It's not going to look good. Same thing in your relationship. It just piles up and creates this emotional clutter. And how do you connect emotionally when there's all that clutter around?
I was just thinking of an analogy because there's obviously 2 people here. And so it'd be almost like building a wall. There's probably not too many people listening here that have built a brick wall, let's say, but it starts with 1 layer at a time, and you put some cement, on top of each one and put them in place. So if you had a 1-layer brick wall, not that big of a deal. You might barely notice it, and you can clearly see over it. But this emotional clutter is keep on putting another layer of bricks, as you build this wall, and eventually you end up in a place where you realize now you can't even see your partner. And that's the emotional disconnection. Feeling emotionally separate is because you've literally put up this wall, but in this case, it's this imaginary emotional feeling of just not being connected. And mostly at this time, you have built up your own sort of story about your partner in a relationship that you think is true, but it's not. It's just this buildup. It's this wall. It's in the way, and you don't even see your partner clearly.
Yeah, and look, we get it. For some of you, you're busy. You have a lot going on. You feel like you have a lot of responsibilities, but that cannot be an excuse for leaving things unresolved. If you care about the relationship, you can always find time to come back and fully repair conversation. So before we move to the second reason, what you want to do is do a check-in right now. Have we been leaving conversations unresolved, and especially conflicts unrepaired? That's really key, that you need to check and identify if this is a pattern you've started to form. Now, going to the second reason that couples grow apart emotionally is a lack of vulnerable, honest conversations. And key word here being vulnerable, right? Like, connection can't just come from superficial conversations. How was your day? Oh, it's fine. All right, what do the kids want for dinner? Okay, what do you want to do this weekend? We need to run these errands. How are your parents? We have those conversations too. They're important to function. But how are you going to have a deeper emotional connection if you're staying at a superficial level? You won't, right? It won't feel like that. Like, it's impossible to connect with anyone when you're just staying at a superficial level.
And this is a key indicator for those that are in a healthy relationship, that you're starting to move down to that functional. This is probably the number one thing I would see that makes it kind of hard to notice if you really are in a healthy relationship. And again, let's be clear. It's not even a healthy relationship as a whole, or a functional relationship as a whole. It's just in this, not even a season. It's just right
moment.
now, is your relationship healthy? Right now, is your relationship functional? And at any time, even if you're dysfunctional, it doesn't mean you're moving towards a divorce or ending, or as we say, completing. Exactly. And so by even noticing these downdraft actions, if you will, you can start to move up. So in this case, I just wanted to say this is a key indicator. If your conversations have gone to just talking about, as you said, like superficial, surface level to-do list, and specifically activities, this is probably moving you, if not already, to a functional relationship. So how do you shift that? You start to get more into the experience conversations and get interested in what your partner's experience of any activity has been.
Which also includes the not so fun emotions. That's why vulnerability is key for this, because I used to, in relationships, think that I needed to just show up as, just perfect and happy, and like that's what someone wanted, right?
I'm just going to be positive. I'm only going to share the positive.
Exactly. And that's not what leads to emotional connection. Again, you've got to be vulnerable. So that means sharing your fears, sharing when you are sad, when you're mad, when you're hurt, when something impacted you, not only related to your relationship, but other things. So an example, let's say work is feeling stressful. It's feeling hard to you. Rather than just telling your partner, oh, it's okay, things are a little bit rough because my boss, that's not being vulnerable. It would be going, I'm in these meetings, and the way that my boss talks to me, it makes me feel inadequate, and it starts to make me feel as though I'm just like not ever doing good enough, and I'm really struggling with that, and it's making me feel this way, right? It would be getting deeper, sharing the deeper, more uncomfortable feelings that I know many of us didn't learn how to do growing up. My hand's raised here, right? Like, so many of us didn't. But if you want to connect emotionally, you've got to open up your heart and share those things that you're maybe nervous about what your partner will think, but you want to create that safety.
Yeah. And to be honest, it'd be a little bit easier to be quote unquote vulnerable or honest about subjects or experiences that are outside your relationship. So where this becomes more difficult is where your partner did say something or do something that challenged you, that had you feel even inadequate or disrespected or invalidated. So really, to get on the court, as you like to say, within your relationship, you have to get vulnerable and honest about how some of the actions of your partner has impacted you.
Yes.
Whether expressed or not expressed. So this obviously has a lot to do with expectations and assumptions, a podcast we've done before and could probably do more of. So this is the harder place to be vulnerable and honest, because it would be easier to shift the blame or point the finger at the partner when you're specifically talking about the experiences between you both that have been quote unquote caused by the other. So because these conversations are more difficult, I know we love to provide the space for couples to have this conversation, but have it not get escalated. So you want to talk about how we provide that?
Yeah. So just as a brief, before we go to the next reasons that couples grow apart, we wanted to actually share. It was really surprising actually last week that we had shared that for 5 couples, we wanted to offer a ridiculous discount to take a relationship assessment that we take couples through. 4 million couples have taken this assessment. It's been around for 40 years. It provides a 25-page report. And so normally that's only included in our larger Empowered Couples University course. And that's $1,000 usually unless we're running a discount. So we wanted to provide a ridiculous discount on this. And we posted it and we said we've got 5 spots and all 5 spots were taken in under 8 hours. And so we wanted to open up 5 more for those of you who listen to the podcast since those were taken so quickly. And so what it involves, you would get to take that relationship assessment. So the 2 of you take it, it's privately done. And this report is going to give you more insight on yourself, your partner, and your relationship than anything could, right? Like years of counseling, years of trying to figure it out on your own, it saves all that. Plus a call with us. And the reason that we do the call rather than just sending you the assessment is because it is pretty in-depth. It's 25 pages. There's a lot that you can correlate, and that's what we do. So we've done, hundreds of these now. I can't even count them anymore. And what we do is point out different correlations. Hey, that challenge you're experiencing in your communication is related to this and this. And both people go, oh, wow, I never would have looked at it that way or never would have identified that. And so on this 1-hour call, we're pointing out correlations for both of you. It is not pointing out one person more than the other, and it isn't even personal. It's like, hey, here's the behavior, the pattern that's leading to this, and people always leave empowered. And both people feel included. So what we're going to do for 5 more couples for just podcast listeners is instead of having to do that $1,000 program, you can take that assessment and do the 1-hour call with us for only $147. $147. So we are just doing this for 5 couples. So the best way to snag that is to either email us or text us. So you're going to want to write these down to take advantage. The text number is 602-321-5652. Again, 602-321-5652. Or email us at connect@newpowercouples.com. connect@newpowercouples.com. Again, you can take the assessment and do that call with us for only $147. So snag one of those 5 spots. It's going to be an absolute blessing to your relationship.
And that'll be in the show notes as well, so you don't have to just remember that. But that assessment is also going to tell you which level of relationship you're actually at right now. Mm-hmm. And this is huge because so many times when we do these assessments, one partner will feel like, yeah, we're most likely healthy, and another partner might be feeling a similar way. But when you do the assessment, it puts your experiences together and tells you, are you actually aligned and on the same page in all of the areas of your relationship? And very often it's surprising for a couple to find they're not exactly on the same page on the areas that they have satisfaction or dissatisfaction, and they often fall more into a functional. So again, it's not that you stay there, but knowing where you're at and getting on the same page with your partner is invaluable. Then we'll take you through actual steps to start to move into these higher level of relationships.
Absolutely.
So really excited to do that with 5 people from this podcast. As we move into the third reason that couples grow apart emotionally, and that's lack of individual fulfillment. And if you two are not happy, if one of you is not happy and feeling aligned as an individual, how can you really show up with your attitude, with your energy, with your thought processes, your emotional state? How can you show up happy for the relationship and available for the other person, right? So it's so critical that you each do the work in your life, not just actions, but take the steps that actually prioritize your mental health, your emotional health, even your physical health, your self-confidence, your pursuits, your aspirations for yourself, and create the space for self-care and personal time, not only for yourself first, but then you allow that for your partner, right? Because what did we say earlier? Relationship is about evolving to the best person and best partner you can be. Then doing that together, your relationship evolves and grows and starts to thrive. So it has to have a foundation of this happening at an individual level first. So Jocelyn, this lack of individual fulfillment, why do you think this happens?
Well, I mean, we can take our eye off of ourselves and get into autopilot, right? Especially as we're supposed to mature and get the jobs and then get the promotion and then take care of the kids and all those things that are still important. Again, we can start to focus more on achievement than fulfillment in life. Tony Robbins talks a lot about this, right? Is it becomes so much about outward achievements and making money and all about the family that we can lose sight of ourselves. And we can even not realize that we aren't as happy as we could be. And so you come home and you turn on the TV and you have dinner and you haven't smiled all evening with your family, right? Or maybe you did, but it's kind of half-hearted smile. And so it's, I think, just easy with modern day pressures to forget about our individual fulfillment and happiness and not prioritize it. Oh, the hardest thing is to hear a partner say, or even both people, when we ask, like, what do you each do for yourselves? Like, oh, we don't have time. Like, by the time we're done with work and the kids and the chores, and we get it. We also have those things as well, but that doesn't matter. You have to prioritize some amount of individual happiness. It might not be the entire full day that you want for some of you in your circumstances. Can it be 30 minutes? Can you wake up a little bit earlier? Could you stay up a little bit later? Could you hire help for 1 hour a week so that you each can do something that you're passionate about? Can you ask for help from your friends or family? Whatever you need to do, because like Aaron said, if you are not happy and fulfilled as individuals, your energy is lower. You're not emotionally available for each other. There's just kind of this shell of a person. I know that might sound dramatic, but it's just kind of this shell is there that isn't bringing this vibrancy and this energy. They're just kind of there playing all these roles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true. One of the things I heard in the beginning, because in this conversation for fulfillment or spirituality or personal growth, I hear a lot of the times, oh, well, because people focus on money. I want to be clear. We are all about making money and a lot of money, but it's a reflection. It is a effect of following the fulfillment. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to be clear because I think a lot of times that gets sacrificed. Oh, you can only have fulfillment if you're not focused on money. Well, we're not focusing on that, but we actually expect, and I'm saying we, all of us, expect that we are way provided for and have everything we've ever needed and that we desire to have monetarily, materially, but it all comes from that fulfillment first.
Yes, that is so true. Okay, so that lack of individual fulfillment is impactful to your emotional connection. Now, going to the fourth reason that couples grow apart is that you settle for a functional relationship. That key word being settle, right? It's like, oh, at least this is something that, looks okay from the outside. We both can get by. It's not taking a ton of energy. And so you just settle for that functionality because here's the thing, that healthy and the empowered conscious partnership, they take active energy. And a lot of us just kind of become a little bit lazy, to be honest. I want to put the least amount of effort in. No, if you want anything to be incredible, your career, your relationship with your kids, of course, your relationship with your romantic partner, it takes you actively putting energy into it. And so when you settle and you stop choosing to show up and you just get complacent and you think, well, I mean, it's decent enough right now. I can kind of coast and go on autopilot. You're not holding yourself accountable to this higher level and you're kind of giving the bare minimum.
One thing that just made me think of, you're probably not even having the thought specifically that, oh, this is decent. Mm-hmm. I think the focus is we're functioning well. That's the wrong focus, right? Just when you've been learning to drive, where you turn your head and where you put your focus is where you start to turn the car, right? So if your focus is on, we're actually functioning really well, you're only going to stay in that functional level of relationship. Mm-hmm. And you'll end up in a place where you feel emotionally disconnected and apart. That's what that path leads to. So it takes shifting that attention, moving your head towards the healthy and the empowered conscious principles and traits, and that's the direction you'll start to go.
Yes, I love your analogies. You're the best of them.
I just thought that just now.
I could see that. Well, and so when you're settling for this functional relationship, it can look like just prioritizing the home being cleaned. Oh, no, I can't sit down and have a meaningful conversation. I've got to clean up. The kitchen needs to be spotless. I have to clean up the living room, all this. Or TV. You say, oh, we don't have time really for each other, but you manage to sneak in 4 hours of TV at night and go to bed at 11 p.m., right? Or working more hours and saying that you have to keep achieving the next level in your work, and you're prioritizing all of that and not being present with each other for meaningful moments, which again, it takes intention, it takes effort. So look, the end of the day might not be the time for you to have the most meaningful conversations. A lot of couples we talk to are like, I'm tired. So instead, get creative and say, you know what, instead of running errands on Saturdays, we're going to prioritize us and we're going to prioritize connection. All right, sure, the kitchen might be a smidge dirtier, or I might not run to all the errands that I need to, but you're prioritizing the relationship and you're not settling for functional. Mm-hmm. And I know it's easy, again, as humans to become on autopilot. It's like we almost feel more comfortable giving the bare minimum because maybe that's all that we've ever even seen. We haven't seen some incredibly vibrant and thriving relationships. And so we've covered quite a bit here, Erin. Should we do a quick summary of these 4 reasons that couples start to grow apart emotionally?
Sure. Also start with the 4 levels of relationship. So we talked about dysfunctional, functional, healthy, and then empowered conscious relationship. And then the 4 reasons couples do grow apart emotionally, which are going to be indicators that you're moving down into a lower level, is unresolved conversations and conflicts, lack of vulnerable, honest conversations, lack of individual fulfillment, and settling for functioning.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. So here's the thing. We're not going to leave you hanging, right? We went into a lot of these reasons, which I know many of you probably felt like, ooh, I needed to hear that, or okay, I've been doing that one a little bit, or we've been caught in that one. Now, we're going to have this kind of be a 2-part series. So next week, we're actually going to go into the 4 keys to unlock emotional intimacy. Like they're literally keys. You're going to be able to turn into the knob, turn it, and then be able to turn on and tap into more emotional intimacy with each other. So you're going to want to make sure to tune in next week for those 4 keys so that you can reconnect or deepen the connection, regardless of whether you feel super disconnected right now or you feel somewhat, but you want to take it to the next level. The 4 keys are really going to resonate with you.
Yeah, no matter which relationship level you're at, these keys, again, no matter where you're at, I want to be really clear. Even if you feel like you're dysfunctional, that doesn't mean that you're too far gone or you can't repair and get all the way up to empowered.
Exactly.
You're always going up and down. So these 4 keys are going to be those actions. They're going to be what unlock the access to the next levels.
Well said. And to speed up this process, if you know you want to go from dysfunctional or functional or even healthy and you want to go up the levels for your relationship, take advantage of that relationship assessment and that call with us for only $147. Like we said, that normally is only included in our $1,000 larger program. So we got 5 spots. They went in under 8 hours when we posted it on social media. So we know once this podcast goes live, it'll go quickly. And as Erin said, the text number and the email are going to be in the show notes. And so you can make sure to go and read those and reach out to us. And we can't wait to do those with you all. As always, we love connecting with you on these podcasts and hearing from you about how you enjoy them and how they make a difference. And with that, we'll talk to you on the next episode.